Hi, everybody. I'm Mike from Zilla Blitz.
I'm Kevin from Fort Circle Games.
And here we are with our Week 3 tournament wrap-up for the 2022 The Shores of Tripoli Online Tournament of Champions. Another amazing week. And as I look at you, Kevin, I notice your background is a little bit different.
I am indeed. I'm actually filming here on location at Labyrinth Games and Puzzles in Washington, D.C., the best game store I've ever been to. The staff is friendly, very knowledgeable about games, very kind. And I have to be honest, it is the cleanest game store I've ever been in my life.
I've heard that already today, yes. And I understand you were with a couple of esteemed guests who are participants in the tournament.
Yes, well, so Jason Matthews and Kathleen Donahue are going to tell us how the tournament's going for them. Let's turn it over to them.
I'm Jason Matthews with Team Glorious Marine Task Force.
And I'm Kathleen Donahue with Team Labyrinth.
And after 3 weeks of the tournament for Shores of Tripoli, I have to say that I'm really looking forward to the release of Votes for Women. It's a great game. I am not doing particularly well, and I think I'll do a lot better with women's suffrage than I'm doing against the Barbary Pirates.
I'm also looking forward to Votes for Women, mostly because I think it's very important that women vote. But I am also not doing super great, but at least I'm beating him.
Well, everyone's beating me, so that's not as big an accomplishment as one might imagine, but here we are. I think it's because I'm too nice, and Kathleen is more cutthroat, sort of.
I just like to go for the gold.
Indeed.
That's no matter whether I'm the Pirates or the U.S. I want all the gold.
I can see that from the immense success of this establishment.
No, I think the reason that I'm so interested is because owning a board game store is not super lucrative.
Well, in any event, this is, as I always say, one of the nicest game stores I have ever been in, and certainly the cleanest. And that is all thanks to this charming woman that I'm sitting next to here, who I've had the privilege of being friends with almost since she opened the store. And if you happen to find yourself in the DC area, please come down and check out Labyrinth Games. It's a fantastic place, and I'm sure you'll be as impressed as I have always been.
Yeah, and we love working with Jason and all of our local designers, and we would love to have you stop by. We're very, very friendly, but apparently the staff and I are not very good at playing games.
So Jason and Kathleen talked a lot about the intense competition they've been seeing, and we've seen it up and down the table. We've had teams rising up and down, teams falling, and we are drawing towards our championship week. Do you want to talk a little bit about what teams, we're going to look at these teams now, but what teams have the potential to make it to championship week?
So the way the tournament runs is the top two remaining teams after 4 weeks of competition will then face off in the final championship week. Right now, there are obviously two teams at the top of the table, Rocks of Gibraltar and Shadow Dawn, and they'll face each other in the fourth round. So what everyone below them is hoping for is that one of those teams wins all of their games. Let's say it's the Rocks of Gibraltar. So that means Shadow Dawn, who's currently sitting on 38 points, stays on 38 points. And then what you want is all of those teams that have 15 wins, 8 losses, and a draw, they're sitting on 31 points. You want them to all go 4-4, and they'll be playing each other, so that's fairly likely. And that means they'll end on 39 points. So because you have 8 games in round 4, if your team can go 8-0 and you have 23 points or more, that would also take you up to 39 points. So really that's the cutoff. If you're at 23 points, you need everything to go right, and you still have a chance to make the playoffs. Now, that's a lot of teams we're looking at, and I'm sure not a lot of teams are going to go perfect, but if you have a good round in the fourth round, it might be enough to get you into the finals. So that's how it works.
And the qualifying condition is you have to have the top record or the second best record.
That's correct.
All right, excellent. And so let's take a look at some of our individual teams. Of course, we have Rocks of Gibraltar have put on a show, but Shadow Dawn, every week we've looked at the standings, they've climbed up a little bit. And so now they are only 1 point behind Rocks of Gibraltar going into this final week.
Yep. Is there anything about that team that you're fond of?
I noticed I actually just dialed into this that Sobi Yosef is actually from Minnesota and he's been playing on Shadow Dawn. So I imagine he's playing a pretty hefty role in bringing them up the standings here. We also
Nice.
have Team Sunflower. Our high school team, Otto von Bismarck, is at 14-9-1, so certainly in the running. Mod Culture, I don't know a lot about. Do you know? Can you say a little bit about them?
So they're a think tank. Well, MOD is the Ministry of Defense. They're a UK think tank, the DSTL, which I forget the acronym, but they've got a pretty good team, and got to watch out for them. And I do believe that actually one of the Naval Academy teams has got a fighting chance to make it too. The USNA
Mamelukes.
Yes.
The Mamelukes are sitting right now, as I look at 15th place, 13-9, so 26 points and a potential to move up for sure. Yeah, and Plumpy Chits and Love Club.
Are you kidding me?
They're 12-12, 24 points, right? That works, doesn't it?
Yeah. They would need to go 8-0, and they'd need the other rounds to break their way. But yeah, they could sit on 40 points. They could be a clear second place, and then all bets are off in the finals. Who knows what happens there?
Speaking of Plumpy Chits and Love Club, I think we have a player from their team to talk about a little bit now as well.
Yes, well, the Toys for Tots player of the week is actually Ada Weiland. She went 2-0 this week. Their team went 6-2. They've definitely been improving throughout the tournament. We wanted to recognize that. So in addition to the $250 donated to Toys for Tots in her name, she has requested a cloth map from the Shores of Tripoli. Let's hear what she has to say about her win.
Hi, this is Ada with Plumpy Chits and Love Club, and I just want to say I am so incredibly honored to have been awarded this week's Player of the Week. I honestly cannot believe it. A few weeks ago, I was playing my very first Shores at Tripoli game. I had no idea what I was doing. I got totally wasted in the first round. And then this week, I played some incredible opponents. Ended up playing the most intense games probably I've ever played in my entire life of any game. This tournament has been so much fun. Thank you, Kevin, for running it. I'd also like to take this moment to thank my sponsors for taking the risk and believing in me. It would be inappropriate during an award acceptance speech to name my sponsors, of course, but you know who you are. Thank you.
So congratulations to Ada on her performance as Player of the Week. And I also want to bring up, we've got some MLB level complexity for teams making the playoffs, but we also have an equal amount of complexity for the individual player playoffs as well. Do you want to explain a little bit of that and try to keep it under an hour or so?
I'll do my best. So we want to make sure that the playoffs for the individual doesn't resolve on the naval prestige points. That's just for ranking. So the way it works is that the top two players will definitely be in a playoff. But if there are multiple teams tied for first or for second, or multiple individuals tied for first or second, all of them will advance into a single elimination playoff. So if you look at the individual records, right now, both Lauren and Corsair Joe Schmidt are 6-0. But they're going to be playing each other, and Joe is also going to be playing Miles from Rockstar Gibraltar, who's 5-1. So they're going to be playing top. So some of these players will be getting losses. And so the notion is that probably people who are 7-1 will advance to the playoffs. Now, we have to keep an eye out on Matt Kay from Poutine Triumphant, because he has 5 wins and a draw, so he has 11 points. So if he wins both of his, he might even sneak forward and be the top seed out. So we'll see what happens, but every player who is tied for either the first or the second, if there's only one person in first, will make it to that single elimination playoff. And then the higher seeded player will get to choose which side they want to play in that playoff.
It's going to be a one-game playoff?
One-game playoff. But if there's say 16 players all with the same record, well then
right,
they'll play, and then we'll get down to 8, then down to 4, then down to 2. So, okay. And I hope people play their games quickly, because that could linger if not. So.
And I'm looking at the individual player standings right now, and it looks like we have 18 players that have 1 defeat or less. So potentially, if you're in that herd, if you would, of 18 players, you could be playing again next week for the individual championship.
But the notion is a lot of those players will be playing against each other, so some of them are going to be picking up losses. So it wouldn't surprise me if we have 6 or 8 people in the playoff, but it could be only 2 or 3, or it could be 10 or 12. We'll just see what happens. So.
Yeah. And for those players who are actually looking for some extra tips and advice and historical context, they might enjoy our next segment. We have Abby Mullen again in for another piece on the history of the shores of Tripoli, and we have some more card tips to look at as well.
While the Navy was blockading the port of Tripoli, other Americans were strategizing a different way to win the war. William Eaton, U.S. Consul in Tunis, and James Leander Cathcart, former consul in Tripoli, hatched up a plan to stage a coup in Tripoli and put in a new ruler who was more favorable to American interests. The person they selected was Hamit Karamanli, the older brother of Yusuf Karamanli, the current Bashaw of Tripoli. Hamit had been overthrown by Yusuf, but now Eaton wanted to put him back on the throne. This plan took the better part of 4 years to materialize. After a lot of planning, complications, and confusion, Eaton went to Egypt in late 1804. He collected Hamit from where he was living in exile and began to assemble an army to fight against Yusuf. Finally, in March 1805, Eaton had assembled a troop of about 400 men, including local chieftains, Greek mercenaries, French cannoneers, and, of course, a handful of U.S. Marines. It took this company nearly 2 months to trek across the North African desert to the city of Derna. They attacked Derna on April 27, 1805, and they were able to take the city within just a few hours. This march across the shores of Tripoli would become immortalized in the U.S. Marine hymn.
There are 4 cards that recreate this march through the North African desert from Alexandria to Derna. Hamit's army creates this odd fighting force, and Hamit recruits Bedouins can complement it. General Eaton attacks Derna, reflects the march and attack on Derna, while Lieutenant O'Bannon leads the charge, honors the brave Marines who fought at Derna. While Tripoli agreed to peace shortly after the capture of Derna, there are 4 cards that allow the American player to explore the attempt to capture Tripoli and install Hamit on the throne. General Eaton attacks Benghazi, and Assault on Tripoli provide the last 2 pieces of the trek to Tripoli. Machine sharpshooters and send in the Marines beef up Hamit's army for the final assault. Of course, the Tripolitan player also has some fierce battle cards as well. Mercenaries' Desert can cause part of Hamit's army to melt away, and the guns of Tripoli threaten any naval invasion fleet. Join us next week as we'll continue with more tips from the shores of Tripoli. So there we have it. Our Week 3 wrap-up is in the books, and good luck to all of our teams and contestants as we head into this final week of the tournament.
And thank you to Labyrinth Games for hosting me today on location. As you'll notice, they have plenty of Shores of Tripoli in stock, and if you're in DC, you should definitely come and visit just the best little game store in the world.